everyone here. Good morning, everyone. Welcome. I'm Mark Minaj. I'm the K14 TAP, the technical assistance provider at the Los Angeles Regional Consortium. I obviously know most of you. I'm really honored to welcome everyone to today's NOVA training as an important opportunity to strengthen our shared understanding, support compliance, and advance the work of our region. LARC is pleased to offer this training series to support our colleges and K-12 partners by providing clear, practical guidance across reporting areas. Today's session will specifically address the focus on training for TAPs and PCs, highlighting the platform's functionality, unique functionality in that area, and best practices. Please note that this session will be recorded and made available on the LARC YouTube channel. We are very fortunate to have Ryan Hatcher leading this series. Ryan is a former Chancellor's Office consultant and a recognized expert in community college workforce programs and the NOVA system. He has led major data, reporting, and grant management initiatives at the California Community College Chancellor's Office and served as a key NOVA training resource from 2020 through 2024. We're so grateful to have his expertise with us today. And Ryan, I will turn it over to you. Thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Yeah, this one's a fun one. I actually was pretty involved with rolling out this program in, I think 2020 was a trip because they did it in a very interesting way, as I'm sure some of you remember. But I've been kind of part of this one. I wasn't actually a part of the original drafting of the SOW to develop it, but as far as all the implementation stuff, I was there for most of it. So um, it's a very interesting program the way it's set up in Nova, and we're going to go through it today. So yes, today we're talking about the TAPs and PCs program in Nova. This is of course kind of and we'll talk about this later. This is embedded underneath the K12 program, K12 SWP, which is of course all part of the SWP family of programs. So, but today we're talking about TAPs and PCs, which I'm sure a lot of you folks on the call are. So this is about, how we're doing reporting for the various things that you all do. So we always start with the rules. For this one, the rules come right out of EdCode. They were set up alongside K12, so we'll talk about how those are kind of converted into requirements and things in Nova. We talk about the actual functionality of these roles and these plans and reports in Nova. This program, more than many others, has a very interesting way it handles institutions and roles, which is kind of integral to how it works. We'll go through a relatively quick. I mean, the functionality of these isn't terribly complex. It's a relatively simple planning and reporting workflows, and then talk about additional resources. And then if any time you guys have questions, please just throw a hand up. I'll be watching the chat over here, and I'll be able to answer. So feel free. But like I said, let's start here with the rules. In this one, the bill that made it, the bill that actually set up K12 and this program was AB 8808 in 2018. So this program's been around for about 8 years now, enacted for about, let's call it 6 to 7, depending on what you're talking about. And the ed code spells out most of it, right? It spells out each roles in detail. It spells out the job duties, the objectives for each one. It spells out the requirements in a lot of cases, as far as actual requirements that would go on a job posting. It spells out these programs pretty well, and most of that is translated directly into functionality for Nova, including the use of remaining funds, which has been a bit of a moving target over the years, and that's we'll talk about that in a second as well. So one of the things it references is the definitions. So these are the definitions from EdCode, just including them here as a reference. Don't need to go into too much detail. I'm sure you guys know what these jobs are. And here's the requirements. And I'm including this because this is straight out of EdCode, and you'll also find the same language straight in Nova, right? So a lot of the objectives you're asked to fill out, both on the planning side and then the reporting side, like what are you planning to do, and then what are your outcomes, are directly based off of these. As you can tell, the PCs, very focused on working as a point of contact with LEAs, collaboration with LEAs, providing technical assistance LEAs. whereas the TAP is much more about leadership guidance, liaising between different organizations, serving as a consultant to the regional consortia in a lot of ways. It's supposed to be just kind of serving as, in some ways, the glue holding the region together with all of these. And again, these are directly translated later. So I'm not going to go into these, but we will be sending out this PowerPoint in case you guys want to use any of this for reference. Um, funding for each is about 2 million for the TAPs annually and about 10 million for the PC. So in total, you're about $12 million. And this was from one of the things to point out is that round 7, which is the current round that's active now, which ends at the end of next month, is using money from 24-25. Round 7, which is active in 25-26, uses money from rounds 24-25. It's a fun. This has been historically a point of confusion around these programs. I think y'all are used to referring to them as by the round numbers, but the actual year it's active and the year it's getting the funding from are always off historically. So it's been a bit of a confusion. I think we used to call them by the fiscal year, and then we started calling them by the round number in Nova to help with that. But just keep in mind that the years are always one off. Also, these numbers have increased over the years too, the actual allocation amounts. So let's talk about funding. This has been a fun one. Working from the bottom here, right? Originally, the Chancellor's Office used to invoice and pull back unused funding and then kind of redistribute it. That's what happened in 1 and 2. In 2021, there was an audit finding which impacted a lot of K12. There was the part of the audit said the Chancellor's Office, the decision and determination of PC distribution are under the purview of regional consortia as contracts are held between the regional consortia and K12 PC host organizations. The changes requested distribution must fall within the existing budget allocation to the region. In this redistribution, there will not be any additional dollars issued. So that is all to say that the decision on how to spend additional money is within the regions. So the Chancellor's Office stopped invoicing and just started saying, hey, when you have leftover money, you have to tell us what you're doing with it effectively. So now instead of returning dollars, the RCs can actually just decide how to use the funds and submit a proposal. And that happens in the fall every year after kind of the funding period has ended. So these memos mostly relate to the concept of essentially how to deal with unused funds, because it has been historically, like I said, a moving target. It's changed a few times. It might change again. We'll find out. I also included links to these. It's the 2 SOWs on the Chancellor's Office for these positions. It's a little more detail. Again, I just put these in here as a reference in case you guys want to look at them. I don't need to go too much into detail, but both are very much based on the same ed code that I was just referring to, and both kind of just spell out what the legal requirements for the positions are. If you want to look at it, let me see if I can pop one up real quick. So this is the K14. So like I mentioned, these are just good references to see what these jobs are supposed to do from the state perspective. And they're fairly detailed. And you can see, right, we've got our objectives, same objectives as are in legislation. And you'll also find these in the reporting as well. A lot of commonalities. You can kind of see the same requirements being funneled through different documentation. All right, back to this one. So let's talk about how the TAPS and PC program sits in Nova. I mentioned it was part of K12, but let's talk about the history of it. So Nova in total was built. It's only been around for about 10 years. It's kind of the 10th anniversary of Nova. So I should send them a fruit basket. The system now has a lot. Originally, it was only SWP, K12 was one of the first ones, Perkins. Now the system contains more than 50 grants. It's essentially the standard system that the Chancellor's Office uses for all of their WED and support ESS grants. So there's a lot more in there now. K12 was added back in 2018. It was one of the originals. And as such, it is hard coded, which essentially means that everything in K12, from the application process to the actual application itself, 90 some percent of that is all hard coded. It is what the developer set it at. And there's some flexibility that the program manager, the chancellor's office have to manipulate it, but limited. It's a bit of a walled garden situation where they have limited things they can do. This program, the TAPs and PCs, were added a couple years later, which was late, frankly. They probably should have added this when K12 went live. And by the time they actually got around to adding the TAPs and PCs, the real priority in 2020, this is when I just started at the chancellor's office, actually. The real priority was reporting. So when it first was launched, the first year, it was just fiscal reporting. There wasn't actually a planning side to it. They added the planning in the next year. So the real focus of TAPs and PCs in Nova has always been the fiscal reporting side. And you'll see that as we look through the functionality, because that's where most of the data and most of the detail is collected. Yeah, so that's what adding in stages, like I have here, is really just a matter of they added the reporting before the planning, which was an interesting way to do it. Also, just I always point this out, Nova is not a data tool. It is a data in tool, not a data out reporting tool. There's Looker, which some of you may have had some sort of access to, but Looker is what all of the Chancellor's Office uses and the RCs to actually get data and reporting out of the system. So the life cycle, and didn't used to be this. I think it used to be a 6 month life cycle. Now it's down to 4 months. Or sorry, it used to be a 6 quarter life cycle. Now it's down to 4 quarters. Nova uses quarters primarily as its measurement of grant duration. So starting, this is round 7 right now. Performance period is FY 25-26. The allocation year, like I mentioned before, that should be a 5. Please forgive my typo. The allocation year is 24-25. I'll fix that. So planning opens in Nova in May. Oops, sorry. Planning opens in Nova in May. Oh, my years are off here. Sorry, guys. I need to update the years on this page. Ignore the years for now. This is the cycle. Early May, planning opens. July 1st, performance period. June 30th, performance period ends. And then September 30th is when the annual fiscal report is due. These fluctuate a little bit every year. These should all be 2025. So please ignore that. Or sorry, 2026. So please ignore that. Oh, sorry. Forget everything I just said for the past 20 seconds. Those are correct. This is last year. Starts in May, performance period's a year, and then the next fall, the reporting's due. This is correct. Brain just wasn't working. But yeah, this is 1 year now. It's a clean fiscal year. Performance period makes it easier. So let's talk about how this is set in the system. So like I mentioned, TAPs and PCs are nested within K12. So under the K12 setting in Nova, you got your applications, plans, fiscal reporting, just like any other program. You also have this TAPs and coordinators kind of sub menu that allows you to get to the plans and fiscal reports. Like I mentioned, this was a late add. And at the time, they didn't really have the capability to develop relatively simple programs in 2020. Now they do. Now they actually have the ability, they could spin up a program like K12 or like TAPs and PCs in a couple hours if they needed to. But at the time, it all had to be custom built, like I mentioned. So the way they did that was kind of cramming it into K12 SWP. It's connected on the back end with allocations, essentially like you allocate money in the system to K12 SWP, and then that flows down into these programs. It's actually similar to how Perkins works, if you guys are familiar with that, with Perkins and then the reserve and 1B grants next to the 1C, kind of as a add-on to the main one. But what this means is to do this right, they had to do some interesting things. And it's the main interesting thing they did was they created a new role and institution types for this functionality. If you're familiar with Nova in general, there are institutions, is what we call any sort of educational institution. So an LEA, a college, a district, even a region, those are all institutions. Anything that is a funding or anything that can be funded as a grant, whatever level it's at, is an institution. Um, in the system, they created, oops, they created institutions for each of the hosts. And the terminology, if you look inside of that filter page, if we'll get to this in a second, but you'll see these listed in such a way like region, geography, CCD, and host. And the tabs, it's region, geography, regional institution, and host institution. You'll see these same terminology, whatever the word is there, this same formula essentially for all of them. And keep in mind, if you are Napa County Office of Education and you are looking up grants under Napa County Office of Education, you will not find the PC because it's not tied to this institution, it's tied to this whole one. So this is a separate institution in the system that is only used for K12 TAPs and PCs, is not tied to anything else. The roles are the same way. PCs and TAPs are their own unique roles in the system. They're called their system roles. We'll get to that in a second. But this is all to say that the roles and institution governing TAPs and PCs are not tied to anything else. They are completely unique. And if you are a TAP and a PC, then we'll talk about what roles you should have, but they don't tie over to anything else. They're entirely their own little island in the system. And it's weird. It's not like any other system in the Nova uses this. This is very unique, but it's just something to keep in mind. And we'll go through a little bit of what that means as we go. But this is just to say that if you're East San Gabriel Valley ROP, you don't necessarily have a PC tied to East San Gabriel Valley ROP. You have it tied to Los Angeles, Pasadena CCD, and this is a standalone institution. So, and this is, let's talk about roles. That ties right into the roles conversation. And if you've been a part of any of these trainings, you'll know that roles in Nova is a big deal. Access to Nova is easy. You can actually add it at a couple points later in this PowerPoint. I'll show you a couple places you can just give someone access to Nova, which most of you as TAPs and PCs technically can do. But they will not have any access to anything in the system. They will only have access to whatever role you give them. So getting access to Nova, very easy. Getting access to do anything in Nova is a much harder thing. Nova's always been a relatively transparent system, but it's role-based access. It means that in order to actually interact, edit, submit, do anything, you have to have the right roles. So let's talk about the specific roles for TAPs and PCs. So number one, we have two kinds of roles in the system. System roles, which apply globally. These are set by admins. They're things like regional monitor and the TAP coordinator, which we'll go into in a second. But regional monitors don't apply to a specific plan. They apply to everything. The regional monitors, they're set centrally in the system and then apply to essentially every program that uses a regional monitor. Then you have project roles. And these are essentially the ones you set on the contacts page of any plan or application. And these only apply to that specific project. So you've got your system roles, which are overarching, which if you have like the institutional program managers or institutional project manager is the most common system role we use. And if you have institutional project manager for LA, or for Pasadena City College for SWP, you have access to every SWP plan, regardless of the year, for Pasadena City College. And by access, in that case, institutional project manager, you essentially have primary lead access. And that's a system role. The project role, if you set someone as primary lead, they will only have access to that specific project. That is very important for the TAPs and PCs specifically, because historically it has been a problem with turnover on these roles. where, someone leaves, their replacement comes on, doesn't have the same access, doesn't have the same roles, they have to go to the help desk to fix all of that. So this is to say that if you are a TAP or a PC, recommendation number one is you have this role. You have the TAP or coordinator role. That's actually what the role is called in the system for your specific institution. And the institution is up here. So you'd want, if you are the PC from this one, you would want the system role of the TAP coordinator for the institution of Bay Area Napa Valley CCD, Napa County Office of Education, which would ensure that every single year going forward, you have access to your plans just in perpetuity. You can also set people as the primary contact, which would give them the relatively same access, but it only makes them, it only gives them access to that specific plan, not future years. So yes, system roles, project roles. Usually, if you have this role, you're also going to set yourself up as the primary contact on the plan. You're going to have both, but having the TAP coordinator role kind of gives you the ability to assign this to yourself because you will have the ability to assign contacts by default. So that's complicated. The roles in the institutions are the trickiest part about TAPs and PCs. If you guys have questions, please let me know. It's never easy to explain that. All right. Let's go on to actually look at some of the functionality in this system. So like I mentioned, this is a relatively simple workflow. So there's only the plan workflow and fiscal reporting. The plan's relatively simple. The fiscal reporting is one annual report. So this is actually one of the less complex programs from this standpoint. I'm going to be showing both the PCs and the TAPs, but just to point up front, there really isn't a difference in the functionality. There's difference in kind of the details. But as you can see, the workflow on both is the exact same, right? It's 3 steps: context, budget, and objectives. For both, context is a relatively simple one. But there really isn't, they're both very parallel. The approval process is the same. The only difference is, yeah, like I said, the budget amount and the objectives and questions asked. So let's look through a plan. Number one, this is true. I just talked about roles for 5 minutes, and I'm going to keep talking about it because it's a very important part of the system. And you will know if you don't have the right roles because you can't see this. If you open up your plan and you don't see the workflow on the left-hand side, if it's just the plan itself with no interactivity whatsoever, then the chances are you don't have the right roles. Like I mentioned, Nova allows people transparency regardless of what your roles are. You can see anything. You could, with any of your roles, you could go into, nursing and look at some of the plans, but you won't be able to interact or touch any of them. Same with this. And the way to know that is if you don't see this workflow bar on the left, then you probably don't have the right roles you need to. And just submit a help desk ticket, tell them I need access to this plan. You send them a link. It's usually the better way to go. And they'll set you up. Hopefully even set you up with the proper role that it's not going to happen in the future by giving you that system role of TAP/coordinator. And yeah, I'm keeping harshing this point, but if you are, for instance, if you have a lot of work you do in the K12 world in general, like if you're very involved with some of the K12 applications and you have a lot of roles affiliated with that, they do not apply over. This is its own little universe. All right. So once you have all the right roles, and you should be able to see it, how to find your plan is these plans are automatically generated. You don't have to make them. They're automatically. One of the things that Nova does, generally speaking, is the way that this type of grant, this is a non-competitive, right? This is the TAPs and PCs are not competitive. They're what we call apportionment, even though that's not technically accurate. But in Nova, you have essentially 2 types of grants: competitive and apportionment. Ignore terminology; it's a whole thing. On the apportionment side, once the allocations are set to an institution, the plan is created. So you guys don't have to create these plans. They're automatically created when the chancellor's office funds it. Essentially, they allocate to these institutions, like I kind of was pointing out, you've got that terminology right there. Chancellor's office allocates to these guys, gives X amount of dollars, and this plan is automatically created. So you don't have to create them; you just have to find them. And to find them, you can use these filters up here. It's a good way to do it. I usually like this fund filter because this is, I think, the terminology everyone's familiar with. So you can find it by just narrowing it down with year 7 tap. If you don't leave this on, you're going to have 7 years of plans to look through. But year 7 tap's good. You can also, there's no lead institution's not super useful because lead institution is not very searchable, but you can start the plan number here is, or the plan field will allow you to type in like Los Angeles, which would filter this down to just the LA schools. And from, God, sorry, I keep using my mouse thing. Yeah. You can type in Los Angeles here under the plan, which would then allow you to, oh, does this work? Oh yeah, look at that laser pointer. So you can type type in Los Angeles to filter down to the plan, or you can type in, your specific school, like Rancho Santiago, which would do it as well. But yeah, fund, plan, probably your best options. Also, status is good if you want to find anything that is draft. From Mark's standpoint, this is probably more valuable to see, oh, I want to see all of the plans still in draft form with Los Angeles in the title for year 7, and he can just do a quick filter on that. So find your plan, click on it, and it'll bring you to the details page. Details page requires nothing. You don't actually have to do anything on this page. It just details about the plan itself. You can skip right through it. Like I mentioned, now you can actually see this workflow on the left-hand side, which you want to see. If you can't see this, that's a problem. And it's relatively simple here: context, budget, and year 7 objectives. So moving on from the details page to contacts. So like I mentioned, contacts is likely going to be the project lead is the tap and the PC. If you have the right system roles, you'll have access to add more leads or even add yourself to this role if you need to. A couple things to point out on this page is you'll see that I've got John Doe set up here as the project lead. This actions field is empty. If I were to add a second project lead, this would be populated by a trash icon because you can delete it, but the system will not let you delete the only project lead in the plan. Just a general system rule that you can't delete the only project lead because hypothetically you would lose access and then be stuck. So it's a safety measure. And the only thing you really need on this page is a project lead. They also have an alternative lead contact available, which has limited abilities. Project leads can edit and submit both plans and fiscal reports. Alternate lead contacts can only edit; they can't submit anything. So a little more reduced roles, but still good if you have somebody collaborating with you on these. Yeah, clicking this little button down here, the add contact pops up this screen. And like I mentioned, there's only 2 options. So relatively simple by Nova standards. That list is usually pretty long. And this is what I mentioned earlier. The next page, once you actually choose whether or not you want the project lead or the alternative or the alternate, this is the next page. This is where you find this invite them here button. Like I mentioned, it is incredibly easy to invite people to Nova with limited access. You can just hit this button, fill out a form, and then they get an invitation. They have to go in and set up their account, but you can invite people to Nova through this button right here. And only do that, obviously, if they're not already in the system. The system will stop you from inviting them. It dedupes based on email address. So if you put in the same email address that somebody already has an account, it will stop you. Otherwise, just start typing their name here. It's called a type ahead field, I think, which means just start typing. It'll prompt you to fill it out the rest of the way. But yes, once you add all your contacts, they'll show up back on this page and you can move on to the budget portion. So the budget is also not too terribly complicated. A few things to point out is you've got the totals up here, just a nice way to track things, summary. The budget narrative was added a couple of years ago. This is part of our standard budget card in Nova now. You will see that the budget narrative is just kind of the story. Tell the story of how the money is going to be spent, right? For these, given that these are essentially support for positions, it's what value is this position bringing? What great things are going to happen. You're going to cover a lot of that in the objectives page, but this is just a chance to tell a little story about how the money's being spent and why it's worth it. You'll see also on that, this is the PC one, same exact screen, just a different number up here for the PCs. Same budget narrative portion. You scroll down a little bit. This is the actual budget, which is built item by item. This is standard Nova functionality. Click new budget item. It'll pop up this page. You have to say the expenditure type. This is your object codes 1 through 7,000. Describe the expenditure, put in the amount of money. And then once you've done that and spent all of it, because it will make you allocate all dollars. If you put in less than this, it will not be completed here. Once you put in all of it, you'll see the total allocation amounts, all of this matches, and it's completed. So relatively simple budget. These aren't typically very complicated for TAPs and PCs. After the budget's done, we move on to the objectives part in both the TAPs and the PC side of things. It's similar here. There are 6 questions. These are all directly related to, actually, I think these might be copied and pasted from those SOW documents I was showing you based on the bullets. But they're pulled directly from the ed code governing this. And one of the things I was going to point out in this one, and you might have seen this in other Nova programs, this is called the error stepper up here. This number says how many fields are required to be complete on this page. You can see these red lines that indicates a required field. And this number will go down to 0 by the time you're done. On really long surveys, it's great to kind of say, oh, I missed this checkbox here, because you can actually, hitting that show button will take you directly to the unfilled out field or unclicked box, whatever it is. But for these, it's 6 questions, so you might not need it. But filling out these 6 questions, saying how you're going to accomplish these objectives is all you need to do for this page. And yep, and then we can move on. One of the things I always like to point out when we're dealing with a lot of narrative questions, which is very much this, like these are 6 long narrative questions, is Nova does autosave. So it's I've tried to trick it in the past, and essentially if you're fast enough, you can trick it. But generally, once you navigate away, if I type a bunch of stuff into this box and then click anywhere else, it'll automatically save it. So I can reload the page, it'll be there. There's a lag time of like half a second, but it'll be there. This is also to say that if you accidentally click on a field that you have several, like if you've got a long response written with like 2,000 characters and you accidentally click on the field and hit a keystroke and then navigate away, it's gone. So that's to say that autosaving can be a double-edged sword. If you are dealing with narrative questions, write them into Word or some other paper, word processing doc first and copy and paste them in. Don't directly work in this system. Yes, it will save it, but I've screwed up many times where I, errantly clicked somewhere and it deleted my entire response, which don't do that. It's a pain. So yeah, generally speaking, work, copy and paste into Nova. Don't worry about saving it. It'll automatically save, but keep your work offline. Yeah, this was the TAP one. This is the PC one. You can see that it's relatively the same. 6 questions. Also straight out of legislation, straight out of those bullet points that I believe came from the SOWs. Once you're done, so at this point, you can see that we've completed all of our steps here. We go down to preview and submit. A couple things to point out on this page is this is where you find the application history button, which is a cool thing. The application history allows you to see the history of the plan application. It takes a cached PDF every time something is approved. In this case, that means fully approved, like the monitors are signed off on it as well. But it takes a PDF of all prior submissions that have been approved. That applies to both the plans and the fiscal reports. Um, so just a useful thing to be aware of if you want to see kind of what changed between various versions if you've made updates. I don't want to go back and reference anything. That's just a quick call out, but all you need to do on this page is go up and hit that submit button once everything's complete. That will then ping your friendly regional monitors, who are Javier. I think Javier is technically your guys' regional monitor over this program because he's over SWP and K12, and then his backup folks are Steve and Betsy. So they will all be pinged when you hit that submit button to come in and click the approve button, which they will see. They see an approve reject button on their side. You will see this send reminder button, which is a good way to ping them again if they don't come in and approve this in a timely fashion. They do have reports and things that should tell them what to do and what needs to be approved. But if you want to just bug them, hit that send reminder button. And once they hit their approve button, which shows up right here on their side, then it's done. And your plan is officially approved. If you need to make changes, this is a relatively new function, which is kind of cool. There's an edit plan ability. So back on that preview and submit page, this is now certified. You can see that right here. Certified is what Nova calls things that are fully approved. So this is fully approved plan. You can still make edits to it. This is a relatively new thing, like I mentioned, because the monitors don't want to have to approve minor changes to anything. So they're essentially, the system allows some changes, relatively not minor even, but the system allows some changes within a threshold without actually having to uncertify and reapprove everything. So let's talk about what that looks like. You have this edit button. Nothing looks like it's changed here. The edit button went away. Everything still looks completed, still says certified. Doesn't look like it's changed until you actually click on one of the sections you can edit. So if you click on budget on a plan and edit mode, you'll see this new up here. The overall modification limit is 28,000 of 140. So essentially 20%. You have the ability, without actually having to get it reapproved, to change 20% of your total budget. And you can, move things around, add new budget codes. There's no restrictions in the system. There might be restrictions on the chancellor's office side. But you can change your narrative. And more importantly, you can do this, which is move money around. This is just an example of, I kind of moved money between object codes, added a new one down here, and you'll see that I effectively changed $20,000 of my limit of $28,000. And it's telling me I can move another 8 around. If I try to move more than this, it will stop me. It'll give me errors and won't let me do it. Similarly, you can go through and make changes to your narrative pieces. You'll see these little arrows or little pencils here indicating this section has been updated. And on the objectives piece, if you go through and change a bunch of things and say, oh, I changed my mind, you can hit this revert button that reverts it back to the last saved version. So, if you same rule here, always keep an offline version. We're talking about this button could potentially undo all of the work you've done. So just make sure you're working on Word alongside this. But essentially, that's how you can change the budget and the objectives portion of this. You just go through and do so. When you're done making your changes, you go back to preview and submit. And then in the top right-hand corner, you can see 3 options here. Exit, edit mode. Doesn't save anything. It actually kind of saves your edit mode as you currently have it. And the plan will look like it originally did before you edit anything. But if you go back into edit mode, you can continue editing and pick up where you left off. But you haven't actually changed anything yet if you just exit now. You should also discard changes, which discards everything you've updated and reverts it back to the way it was originally submitted. Um, if you discard changes and then go back into edit mode, your edits are gone. You have to start from scratch. Or you can submit changes, and that essentially overwrites the previous plan with the new details. Now, if you submit the changes and then go back and edit again, you will see that this number is still the same. It won't reset your limitations. So let's say you edit once, change 10 grand, go back, edit again, change 10 grand, go back and edit again and try to change another 10 grand. It'll stop you the third time because you can only edit up to 20%, even if you edit multiple times. Now, the way to get around that issue is this also the same way to add, or is the way to get around the issue is the same way you would make big changes, right? Which essentially is decertifying the plan. So if you need to make over 20% of your budget changes, either cumulatively or all at once, the only option is you got to decertify the plan, click these three buttons on the preview and submit page. Most of the stuff happens in the preview and submit page. But if you click these three buttons, hit that decertify button, that returns the plan back to draft state. You can make any changes you want in draft, or it's technically not draft, it's edited state. It's the whole thing, terminology in the system, but it's editable at that point, fully editable, looks like the same way it was in draft. And you can make any changes you want. When you're done making those changes, you submit it the same way you did before, hit that submit button, which will appear at that point. And then the monitors also have to reapprove it. So if you need to make big changes over 20% of the budget, you have to decertify it, resubmit it, get it reapproved. So let's talk about fiscal reporting, because like I mentioned, this is relatively simple for this one. One annual report, no final report. So one report per year. There's only two sections of it. We'll talk about the financial section and then the year-end report sections. And the year-end report is very different for TAPs and PCs. So we'll talk about that a little bit. Approvals for the fiscal reports are the exact same as for the plans, with a bit of a asterisk there, but they work the same way. It's just the regional monitor that is required to approve fiscal reports. To find your fiscal report, one of the easy ways to do it is on that same preview and submit page that we were just looking at a few times. There's a link to fiscal reporting. And now, general rule in Nova for fiscal reports is that when the plan is not certified, you'll see this is certified, which means this button exists. If the plan is in editable or even submitted but not certified state or status, so if you've submitted but the monitor hasn't approved it yet, fiscal reporting is not available. It's hidden. The logic is always that fiscal reports are driven by the budget. So if the plan is open and might be changed, then the budget might be changed, and fiscal reporting needs to be hidden away while that is happening. And then fiscal reporting is hidden, like I mentioned. It's not actually like removed or anything by any means. If you have anything in your fiscal report, submitted, non-submitted, whatever it is, even just drafts in there, they'll all come back. They're just hidden. They're not gone. They'll all come back the way they were once the plan is recertified. So in order to actually get the fiscal reporting, you can click this shortcut link here, or you can go down here underneath plans and click on fiscal reporting. This is the faster way. Takes you directly to the report. But if you do click that other link underneath plans and fiscal reports, this takes you back to one of these filter pages. This is all the fiscal reports on a list. There is no fund field on this one. Fund is interchangeably used with grant in Nova, just terminology. It's one of the more fun things about the system. But you can see there is no fund here, so you can't choose by year 7 PC or year 7 TAPs, which is another reason to just use the link inside of the plan. But if you do want to find yours, just remember that funding year is the year prior to the performance period. So you can do it that way. So if you wanted to find round 7, you would choose funding year 24-25. or you could just start typing under title Los Angeles, because these are all titled the same way. They have consistent titles. So you can start typing Los Angeles, but keep in mind it's using this syntax, right? The Bay Area region, Cabrillo College syntax. So that is a factor there. Anyway, once you identify your plan using those filters, then we actually get to the fiscal report. So let's talk about, this is an actual example of a fiscal report. The guidance up here says a lot of what I've been saying already, right? Fiscal reporting becomes available when plans have entered certified status. So just read this as a refresher. Most of this doesn't apply. This is the standard guidance that goes above all the fiscal reports in the system. It can be changed. No one's updated this to make it specific for PCs and TAPs, which is why like reporters can live across periods. That's true, but not really relevant to y'all because you only have one report per year. So don't worry about that piece. Same down here, right? To update a prior period, well, you don't have prior periods. You only have the one. Similar, these drop downs don't have anything dropping down. There's only 1 year. There's only one report. So you can pretty much ignore these because you can see there's only one report for this year, and it's Q4. So you just, let's scroll down. There's two parts to this, like I mentioned. Part number one is financial piece. I should point out this is all garbage numbers I put in. This is that example I was looking at earlier. So this is not their actual numbers. So, LACOE, sorry if I'm using you as an example, but this is not actual real numbers. But yeah, for this one, it's literally just how much did you spend according to these. I would not recommend putting anything in an unfunded object code because that's a big red flag for the monitors. I believe that's not technically okay by Chancellor's Office rules. So just, yeah, say, if you spent 85 here and 20 and 10 here, then you're 5 short the whole time. That's fine. This will not require you to spend everything. It's asking what you spent according to your budget. So put those numbers in and you can move down to the real meat of this report, which is the survey. So, like I mentioned at the beginning, when this program was originally put into Nova, this was the focus. They needed these year-end reports. They needed to know how much was spent and they needed to know outcomes. So when this program was originally built, that whole planning side didn't exist yet. This has always been the core of this plan. And when it comes to the PCs, it's a 13-question survey. It's all about outcomes. You can see it's very similar to the plan piece and that it uses the same language, but instead of saying, what are you planning to do? It's saying, what did you accomplish, right? So this is really the chance to brag about everything that's been accomplished by you and by the program over the last year. One of the things that I always remind people of is the Chancellor's Office is not trying to get you or trying to trap you in any way or trick anything. They need this information so they can advocate on this program's behalf. They need to say, hey, look at all the great stuff that our TAPs and PCs are doing. We need to keep funding them, right? So just brag. You're not trying to get caught up or trapped or anything by them. They're just trying to get the ammunition they need to support this program. So yeah, just talk about the great job you've done and the great work this program is doing. The the TAP one is a much more in depth. You got 24 questions total, almost twice as many. It's really the focus of everything. And the TAP, unlike the K12 or unlike the PCs, has a whole bunch about coordination of the PC. So how many pathway coordinators, what types of activities did you do to support them? How did you track them? One of the things that it also includes on this one is there's a drop down, or not a drop down, a file upload box to include any sort of PD that's been done. This was a effort by the Chancellor's Office to create a library of such documents. I don't know how that's going, but it's a question in the survey. So 24 questions. This is a really beefy one. If you guys want, we can look through it in the actual Nova. I didn't take screenshots of the entire thing because that would be a lot, but we can look at it in Sandbox if you want. So, like I mentioned, this is really the focus of it. Make sure you check everything as you go. There's a few questions which have follow-ups. Question 8, for example, on this one has a if it's asking K12 versus CTEIG, and if you answer both, then it asks you to kind of say how much time you've been supporting on each. It's a drop down with a percentage question. So there's a lot of little functionality that might pop up in these, but it's a survey. Fill out the survey, and then we're all done. Um, Once you're done with the survey, you hit this submit report button. If this button is gray, it means you missed a question. There is no error step around this page, which is kind of unfortunate. It's a nice tool. So there's nothing telling you up here kind of what you've missed, but you'll know you've missed something if it doesn't let you actually submit. If this is gray, scroll up and see if there's something with a red line, or this you must check at least one box to find out what you missed. But once everything's done, you go ahead and hit this submit report button. It goes back to the monitors again for their approval. You can remind them the same way you did with the plans if you want to. But once they hit their approve button, then it's done. You'll also notice this, which is not something to worry about. Somebody clicked a box when they were setting up the grant that said the fiscal report approver is also a required approver. But no one's in this role, and there's no reason they would be. So this is kind of it's a weird artifact based on how the program was set up, but it doesn't actually impact functionality at all. Don't look at it. Don't even worry about it. You'll see if there's no one actually assigned to this role, the system auto approves it, which is just not even a thing to worry about. So this is now an approved fiscal report. If you need to make changes to it, like if you say, oh, we actually spent $3,000 more than we thought we did. Oops, it happens. It's a two-stage process. Back to this page. This decertify button is step number 1. Hit this decertify button. You also have to go all the way down to the bottom once you've done that, hit the unsubmit report button. So it's actually a 2-step process. You have to decertify it, and then you have to unsubmit, and then you can make changes. Once you've made changes, then you do it in reverse. You have to go back, hit the submit button again, just like we just did a couple slides ago, and then the regional monitors have to approve it again. So to make change, you have to decertify and unsubmit. Then you have to submit, and they have to approve it in order to get it back. So it's a bit of you have to go through the whole process in reverse and then back again. All right. So archiving, this is the kind of the last thing. This is relatively new. This used to be called closing plans, now called archiving. Back on that preview and submit page, once you've done with everything, once the final report's all set and you just kind of want to put a pin in this one, I don't know if it's required or not to do the archiving function, but it is just housekeeping. Historically, this was called close plan, and usually it is still called close plan for a lot of them, but they, I think, moved to this archive because it sounds better language. But yeah, once you're done, once you're confident that everything for this round is over and done with, just go up here, hit archive plan. It'll tell you that, it'll have a little warning here. If you do need to open it up back up again and make it editable, the help desk can do that. You can't, but the help desk can. So you just archive and move on. So that's the entire life cycle in Nova. If you want to know more, the Nova Help Desk is a great resource for I've mentioned it a few times, role changes, any sort of problems. The Nova Help Desk is your friend. Click on the bottom left-hand corner of Nova. There's a help button at the very bottom of the program menu, which has a link to the help desk. So contact them if you need anything. The Chancellor's Office has a good amount of documentation for these programs. That's a link to theirs. LARC has a lot of K12 resources. Some of them very much involve the TAPs and PCs. This page, I think, actually lists all the TAPs and PCs from the region. And then just calling out the LARC YouTube page. A couple of years ago, I did walkthroughs for TAPs and PCs. So it's a little bit out of date now, but they are still in there. There's some videos and various other resources on the LARC YouTube page. So that is it. Hey, look, 4 minutes early. Um, any questions from anyone on K12 taps and PCs?
Don't
All
see
right.
any questions. Well, thank you, Ryan, so much for a great session. It was very informative. And thank you, everybody, for joining and the engagement and attending. Um, Please register for future trainings that we have. I'm going to drop the link to our LARC website calendar in the chat. So be sure to check that out, as well as the Nova training schedule flyer that has the series and the next couple of sessions. You'll be able to register um, from that PDF flyer. And thank you again for your partnership and for all the fun, exciting updates and features of Nova. We know you're the expert and all the important work that you do. And thank you everybody for joining us. The session was recorded, so we'll be sure to share that out. So have a great day. Thank you, everybody.
Thanks all.
Thank you.